Morning, everybody. So today we're going to talk about how long you should hold on to your truck and what is B50. You're like, where's this B50 coming from? I've heard of B52s, but in trucking, if you're an owner operator, you should be familiar with the concept of B50. I don't know where it comes from, but basically, what it is that for like the DD15 engine, the B50 rating is 1.2 million miles. What that means is that 50% of the engines will fail before reaching 1.2 million miles. Now, wonder like, well, why don't they all fail? Or why is it only half the engines fail? Well, it depends on the type of truck, the type of hauling you're doing, the conditions, which truck is operating. So those trucks that make it beyond 1.2 million miles, for example, are probably hauling light loads. Think of UPS, FedEx, Amazon. Yeah, those engines are hauling light loads. They have a pretty good chance of making it to 1.2 million miles or beyond. If you were hauling for Crete, uh, we haul bottled water, 45,000 pound load. Dog food, 45,000 pound load. Large paper rolls, 45,000 pound loads. So the odds of you getting a truck at Crete and your engine surviving beyond 1.2 million miles, you would be one of those trucks that may make it, may not. My last truck was or not my last truck, my first truck was a DD13. Um, and it made it to 1.2 million miles before it blew up. Um, I would expect similar performance on the DD15, just because you do get at Crete, you do get into the mountains, you do haul heavy loads from time to time. You do drive in the winter, and you do drive in extreme hot temperatures in Arizona, California, things like that. So I would say at Crete, you know, just just plan on you being part of that B50 group that their engine doesn't survive beyond 1.2 million miles. Uh, it's not advisable to go more than 900,000 miles without an in-frame. You could, and I have, it can be done. It's not impossible, but it's not recommended either. I've talked to Detroit Diesel master certified mechanics about it, and they would prefer to do an in-frame probably around 800,000 miles to get the most out of the engine. But if you do decide not to do the in-frame, at some point that motor will, um, it will fail. The pistons will throw a rod, or it'll crack the block or something. And you don't know when it will happen or where it will happen. I was kind of fortunate. I was hauling a heavy ass load, and I was in Fort Worth, and the engine blew. And we have a terminal in South Dallas, so I was able to get towed to my favorite Freightliner dealer, which was Premier Freightliner South Dallas. And they couldn't do an in-frame or an out-of-frame. They would have to replace the whole engine, and the quote was $50,000. It's like, no, we decided not to go that route. But we got another truck instead. But the thing is, let's say you're a rookie owner operator, you're on your first truck, and you're wondering, okay, what's your strategy going for it? Because the truck is doing great your first year, and even your second year you're probably doing fairly okay. You may have a little bit of a sophomore slump your second year, but overall it's not too bad. And then it's like, well, how long should I keep this truck? Well, the general consensus that I gather from most owner operators is that they will keep the truck until the warranty expires. And then once the warranty expires, they start planning on getting another truck. I mean, they're already saving money. They're, the third year of owning the truck, which would be between 650,000 to 750,000 miles. They're saving their money for a down payment on a truck. The warranty on the Freightliner Cascadia, if you buy the truck from Crete, you buy the Daimler EN4 warranty. The original warranty goes up to 500,000 miles, 5 years or 500,000 miles. Then when you buy the truck, Crete requires you to buy the extended warranty, which is an additional 2 years or 250,000 miles. But the max total length of the warranty is 7 years or 750,000 miles, and it's 7 years from the date of manufacture. So if the truck is a 2019, that's the model year. It was manufactured in 2018. So the clock starts ticking in 2018. So it could be manufactured late in 2018, or it could be manufactured early in 2018. I know some guys that their warranty has already expired, and they expired in June. So it wasn't by the calendar, it wasn't a full year, but if you look at the date of manufacture, it was 7 years. They haven't reached 750,000 miles, but they did reach 7 years, and the warranty is expired. So a lot of owner-operators don't want to run without the warranty, because the warranty covers the DEF system, and it covers the one box, it covers the fuel pump, it covers a lot of the engine components, and then once the warranty goes, then it becomes a high-risk truck. So from a strategic standpoint, you have to plan ahead. You're just like, how long are you going to keep this truck? Are you going to be one of those drivers that keeps their truck beyond the warranty? You could, that's an option. I will tell you, as someone who's already done that and taken a truck up to 1.2 million miles, there's pros and cons for doing that. And you're going to have a lot of money to work with. The problem with taking a truck, let's say you're going to take a truck from 750,000 miles up to 1 million miles, and you're not going to do an in-frame. Let's just say, for hypothetically, you're not going to do an in-frame. You're going to take your chances. You're going to look at that B50 rating of 1.2 million miles, and you're going to say, well, the B50 rating is 1.2. I should be able to get up to 1 million. You may not. It's a gamble. It is. It's a total gamble. But let's say you do. Let's say you're going to keep your truck and you're going to try to reach for 1 million miles. Now, the pros is you won't have a truck payment. The cons is every time truck breaks down, you're going to be paying out of pocket. So if the DEF system needs replaced, that's a $10,000 repair. You're going to pay that out of pocket. If the one box goes bad, which does happen, you're going to pay that out of pocket. That's $20,000. Fuel pump, turbo, these things will all need to be replaced. EGR cooler, that could be $5,000. And you haven't even done an in-frame. So, and hopefully you won't need a new transmission, especially with it being an automatic. The old manual transmissions were less expensive to replace than the automatic transmission. So you got to think about the transmission as well, in addition to the engine. And the transmission is not cheap. I haven't looked at the pricing for an automatic transmission, but I would imagine it's probably right up there, probably 20,000 or more. So it gets to be a high risk game to run the truck without the warranty. It's not that the truck is bad, it's just that normal wear and tear. I know guys do frequent oil changes. They'll do a lot of extra maintenance. Try to take care of their trucks. Generally speaking, that has little to no impact on the life of the truck. And you're like, well, I do my oil change, every 50,000 miles, every 25,000 miles. Okay, that's fine, but it doesn't neglect, negate the fact that the type of load you're hauling, the terrain you're hauling, and the weather conditions you're hauling. You know, you could still be wearing that engine out regardless of how often you changed oil. Now, I personally would just follow the maintenance schedule, but some guys want to go above and beyond the maintenance schedule, and they think they're going to, get a longer lasting engine out of it. You could debate that all day long till the cows come home. Um, I would just stick to the maintenance schedule. I don't think it has really any impact on the longevity of the engine, how often you change the engine oil. What it's going to affect the longevity of the engine is the type of load you're hauling. That's good. That's what it's going to be. If you're hauling heavy loads through the Rocky Mountains, the truck has to do more work. The engine has to do more work. If you're hauling Amazon, that's less work. So that's what's going to affect the life of your engine more than anything else. But even if you do have a long-lasting engine, that may not be the determining factor how long your truck lasts, because these trucks are highly complicated pieces of machinery, not just from after treatment system, but there's thousands of components, thousands of them, and they have like rubber seals and gaskets and O-rings and fittings. This stuff all works when the truck is brand new. But as it ages, the rubber starts degrading, the O-rings start failing, leaks start appearing. You could have power steering leaks, you could have coolant leaks, you could have many air leaks. The anything that's rubber will probably need to be replaced. It's because of the age. It's normal wear and tear. It's like you look at the air suspension bags on your truck. You know, those aren't going to last all the way up to 1 million miles. Those will have to be replaced. Same thing with the cab shock airbags, the little tiny ones. Those will have to be replaced. Your shock absorbers will have to be replaced 2 or 3 times. You'll have to spend several $1,000s for a new set of tires on an old truck. Uh, you'll have to replace the turbo at some point. Turbos don't last all the way up to 1 million miles. You'll have to replace the EGR cooler. You'll have to replace the fuel pump. Fuel pump won't make it to 1 million miles. You'll have to replace the air compressor. All these things represent costs that's not under the warranty's expired. So now you're going to be paying for it out of pocket. So there's the cost of the repair plus the cost of downtime. So your time is worth something. So if an owner operator, typically their gross revenue is $700 a day, their net income may be $500 for the day. So every time one of these little components fail, that represents downtime. If you're in the shop for 3 days, and the repair is $5,000 plus you lost 3 days of income, $500 a day of net income. That's additional $1,500. Plus, you probably had to get a hotel room, and buy food. There's another $500. So the repair was $5,000. The downtime was $1,500. The hotel and food was another $500. That's a $7,000 repair, and it happens frequently. When the truck gets older, it breaks down frequently, and you never know when it breaks down. when the truck had 400,000 miles, it rarely broke down. When the truck had 500,000 miles, it occasionally broke down. You know, when the truck has 700,000 miles, it starts to break down on a regular basis. And at 800,000 miles, it breaks down every 4 to 6 weeks. The truck is getting old. It's getting worn out. You know, it seems okay when the warranty is in place, but as soon as that warranty expires and you got to start paying out of pocket, you know, these things add up, and it doesn't make a lot of business sense from a cost benefit analysis. You know, you add up the cost of the repairs for what you paid to keep the truck on the road. You could have bought another truck that had the warranty, and it lowered your risk of operating the truck. You know, but you decide to hang on your truck, and so now you're going to pay to keep it on the road. You're going to pay, and pay some more. You're going to be tired of paying, you know, but until you played that game and you get tired of it, you're going to keep paying, you know, and you're going to pay for the tow truck. You're going to pay for the hotels. You're going to become what I would call a shop rat. You're going to live at the shops. You know, there won't be a Detroit diesel certified shop that you're not familiar with. You'll know them all. You know, but the other part of this is that it's poor customer service, because if your truck is constantly breaking down, you can't make on-time delivery. So now you're not servicing the customer. And you may not be too concerned about that, but the carrier is. You know, so it's going to affect your relationship with Crete. You know, they're not going to be too happy with you running that old truck. Um, you know, so many owner operators prefer to change trucks when their warranty expires. Not all, but many. And for a new owner operator, it's safer for you and your business to run with the warranty. An experienced guy, you know, can take on an older truck and do an in-frame and keep a truck on the road and pay out of pocket for everything that comes up. But for a new owner operator, this is quite the challenge. You could be in over your head, and you may regret holding on to your truck. You know, I know guys have some kind of bond with their truck. You know, and you need to break that. You need to break that bond. You know, you need to see it for what it is. It's a used piece of equipment with high mileage and no warranty. From a business standpoint, you got to think about the bond you have with your business entity, whether it's a sole proprietor or an LLC or an S corp. That's your bond. Your bond is your checking account. Your bond is not with the truck. The truck becomes a liability once the warranty expires. And it's good business practice to minimize your liabilities. And a truck with a warranty is an asset. A truck without the warranty is a liability. You know, so this is what you got to think about. And for some guys, you know, they got to see it to believe it. You know, I'm certainly in that camp. I'm in the camp that is like from Missouri. You know, show me state. Show me. You know, don't tell me, show me. Okay, well, you know, when the truck starts showing you, don't get mad that it's going to cost you a lot to keep it on the road with no warranty. It's going to show you, and you're not going to be happy. Yeah, but you will see it for yourself. And for some guys, including myself, that's what it's going to take, because there's so much misinformation out there about trucks, how to maintain them, how long you should keep them, that without the experience of having been there, done that, you know, it's hard for you to believe that it's not a good idea. You know, I could tell you it's not a good idea, but you may have to see it for yourself before you're convinced that it's not a good idea. You know, guys had told me when I had my truck, They told me, they warned me not to do it. I did it anyways, and I had to see it to believe it. You know, you may be in a similar boat. You may have to see it for yourself in order to believe it. But I can tell you, having an old truck with 1.2 million miles and then getting into a new truck with a warranty, night and day difference. You know, my profitability went through the roof once I was running with a truck with a warranty. You know, a truck without a warranty takes all your money. You know, you save up 10 grand, and it breaks down, and then it takes 10 grand to get it back on the road. And it's like you're always spinning your wheels. You can never get ahead. You know, you're just driving from one breakdown to another breakdown. Um, it's difficult to take a truck up to 1 million or 1.2 million miles, no warranty. That's of all the things you could do as an owner operator, that's probably the hardest thing you could do, and that's why guys don't do it. You know, they get rid of their trucks when the warranty expires, and you take a look at that truck and you say, well, I babied this truck. This truck is in pristine condition. This truck is well maintained. Yeah, I get it, but the truck has no warranty. It's got 750,000 miles on it. It's a ticking time bomb. I don't care how good you took care of it. Uh, that doesn't matter. The parts are getting worn out. All the things you can't see, are getting worn out. That turbo ain't gonna last forever. The fuel pump's not gonna last forever. Air compressor's not gonna last forever. EGR is not gonna last forever. Not to mention the one box or the DEF system. Did you maintain those? No, because those are bolt-on, components. You know, you're not in there maintaining that stuff on a daily basis, and that's the stuff that's the most expensive. Same thing with that transmission. Did you maintain that every day? No. You know, uh, I don't care what the body looks like. The body's not making you money. The body's not costing you money. It's everything else that is expensive. It's downtime. It's the cost of the tow truck. It's poor customer service. So when you think about these trucks, understand that there's a B50 rating. That means of all those engines on the road, half of them will fail. If it's a DD15, half of them will fail before reaching 1.2 million miles. That's why guys are doing in-frames at 800,000 miles. They don't want to be part of that 50% where their engines fail and they're stranded on the side of the road and through a rod, and now the engine's been cracked and they can't even do an in-frame. They have to do a total engine replacement for 50 grand. It's better to do an in-frame for 30 than do an engine replacement for 50. But when the warranties came out, and these warranties are relatively new. I mean, this has only happened in the last few years. But when the warranties came out, it changed the owner-operator business model. And now the business model is focused around the warranty. Before, guys were half mechanic, half driver. In order to be a successful owner-operator, you had to be really hands-on. But when the warranty came out, it became, a lot of things became tamper resistant. And if you got in there and started tearing things apart, you would affect the warranty. So then guys are like keeping their hands off the truck because they don't want to affect the warranty. And then when the warranty expires, they get rid of that truck. And when they get rid of the truck, these are typically throwaway trucks. And for a rookie, that just blows their mind. You tell them their truck is a throwaway truck. They got a lot of money tied up in that truck. Yeah, that's the owner-operator business model. You pay a lot for a truck and you don't get anything for it when it's time to sell it. Sorry, that's how the industry works. Your truck did not go up in value over the years. It went down in value. Trucks depreciate $20,000, $30,000 per year, whether you drive it or don't drive it. You could park it in your driveway for a year. It'll drop $20,000 in value. It's another year older. it doesn't matter if you washed and waxed it every day. It has no impact on the value of that truck. Um, as you know, so what you need to know as a rookie owner operator is that trucks are expensive, but you are making more money. And you need to save that money and prepare for your second truck. And when that truck warranty expires, your truck's not worth much. Not much. It's not worth zero, but it's not worth much. So you have three options. You trade it in. If you're going to trade it in, do it before 700,000 miles. If you trade your truck in before after 700,000 miles, the dealer probably won't take your truck. It won't sell on their lot. They don't want it on their lot. They, the lower the mileage the truck has, the higher the value, higher trading value. When you trade it in, you're not going to get book value for that truck because the dealer's got to make a profit. He's going to give you much less, much less. You may be insulted by how much, they're not willing to give you. But that's one way to get rid of your truck. Another way is you let Crete sell it. If you let Crete sell your truck, say your truck has 750,000 miles, somewhere in that time frame. The warranty is expired. Crete sells your truck, it's probably less than $10,000. That's it. That's all it's worth. They'll sell it through their network of buyers. Their buyers buy at auction or wholesale prices. They won't give you a lot for that truck. Or you could try to sell the truck on your own. Selling your truck on your own is the hardest way to sell your truck, to get rid of your truck. It's time consuming. You'll be surprised that guys will not give you what you want for the truck. You'll be sitting on that truck. You may need to sell the truck before you buy another truck. And it's very difficult to sell your truck. Very, very difficult and disappointing. You have in your mind that your truck is worth so much money, but it's only worth what the buyer's willing to pay. And you're going to be in for a shock when you find out that your truck's not worth a lot, even though you got a lot of money tied up in it. That's just the reality of the situation. So these trucks don't last forever. You're going to have to come up with a strategy. Don't be surprised if you walk away from a truck. Guys often just walk away from the truck. They don't care what it sells for. They just want to get away from it because the risk of breakdown is so high, they don't want to pay for it. So that's why they're throwaway trucks. They don't want to put 30 grand in an end frame. They don't want repetitive roadside breakdowns. They don't want to pay for these repairs. They'd rather have a truck that's under warranty. So these trucks are throwaway trucks. You get what you get, and then you go buy your next truck. That's the reality of the situation. Now, you can deny the reality, but the reality is still there. And maybe you're one of those guys that are from Missouri, and you need to see it. It's the show me state. Show me, don't tell me. Okay, well, we're going to show you, and then you're going to see it for yourself. And when you start paying, you start learning. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.